Good morning, and an enthusiastic thank you to our attendees and panelists for joining us. My name is Kate Tallman, and I was honored to be on the exhibits and programming juries this year. And I'm excited to be the awards chair for the 2022 Sustainability Excellence Awards. This morning, we are concluding our two-part series focusing on our 2021 winners. We're thrilled to have the Museum of Modern Art, the St. Louis Green Business Challenge, which is run through the Missouri Botanical Garden, and the Burke Museum here with us today. Each museum will focus on their respective winning projects, and then we will have time for a short Q&A session after each institution. So if you have a question during the presentations, please feel free to drop your question in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Before we get started, I wanted to thank Sharon Gaber for manning our chat and socials, and Rachel Moritz for moderating the Q&A session. Our first presenters are Jean Savitsky, Director of Real Estate and Sustainability for the Museum of Modern Art, and Rebecca Riss, Benchmarking and Carbon Strategy Leader at Edelay 10. This partnership between MoMA and Edelay 10 produced an exemplary build focused on beauty, function, and sustainability. Jean and Rebecca, please share how this project came to be.
It was put on hold when as the economy kind of slowed down, and it came back on several years later. And it was a challenging project because it integrated multiple buildings across 53rd Street in New York City. And these were buildings of iconic architecture that were associated with MoMA. And we were trying to get a seamless transition from one end of the campus to the other, but yet maintaining and respecting the architecture as it was. The project included several stages. There was a renovation of space within the existing museum. There was a new construction element where we built a new core and shell gallery tower. And then there was actually a condominium furthest to the west that we slid some galleries into. And then everything connected back from an infrastructure standpoint to the main museum campus. We also did this work while the museum stayed open. And it's ironic to me that it was only in the last 90 days of construction that we closed the museum down because we needed to rehang everything to showcase the art in a different way. But for the 4 years and 9 months, the museum stayed open to visitors, and we needed to ensure that it was a seamless experience for them. But the one thing we do want to point out is that we were fortunate to have the commitment from our board and from the leadership of the museum that from the get-go, sustainability was going to be at the forefront. The design, the operation, they encouraged us and pushed the envelope. And that's why we were so fortunate to have Atelier 10 as our partner in this to get to the highest level of LEED certification and building performance that we could get to. Next slide, please. So basically what we were doing was, like I said, blending all of the components of the museum together. And this was a great opportunity for MoMA to kind of rethink how the art was going to be presented. So we went from a gallery specific or kind of curatorial type specific art installation to an installation that integrated the various types of art, but it was a chronological installation. So as you walk through the galleries now, you see different types of art and different formats adjacent to each other. And it gives the visitor to the museum a great context of how potentially photography developed along painting, developed along sculpture in a specific period of time. It also allowed the museum to introduce new gallery types, which we hadn't had before. So we have double height gallery spaces that connect with one another. We have a black box studio that is completely flexible and completely sound attenuating. So it could be used for dance or film or theater or spoken word, or just opened up and have art installed in there, which was actually what you saw in the first slide. It allowed us to create a multitude of circulation routes within the museum, so visitors could experience the art in the way that worked best for them. So it was a really exciting opportunity for MoMA. We also made sure that there was a much better connection to the urban fabric of New York City by changing the entrance of the museum and opening it up and making it much more gracious and creating a really seamless flow on the ground floor from galleries to retail to public spaces. So you could just come in and really enjoy the museum from the moment you stepped into the building. Next slide, please. So this was a huge undertaking and it was complicated. And because the museum stayed open, like I said, all the way through, it took the best level of thinking from the best consultants and the best contractors that we could find to work with us, to partner with us. And it truly was a partnership because I think everybody felt like they owned this project. It wasn't doing a project for a client, but it was doing a project for everybody together. And this is just a smattering of the various consultants and vendors that we worked with. It's by far from a comprehensive list. And again, we were just so fortunate to really get the best thinking around sustainability. And everybody got on board with the mission really quickly and helped us really think outside the box and take us from what we thought was going to be a LEED gold building to a LEED platinum project. And Rebecca's going to talk through how we got there.
Great, thank you, Jean. So as Jean mentioned, from early on in the project, MoMA emphasized the importance of sustainability and sought guidance from the design team to create a space that incorporates these forward-thinking environmental strategies. The expansion represented a unique opportunity for MoMA to comprehensively evaluate its approach to sustainability and define this legacy of environmental as well as cultural stewardship that Jean was just describing. So at Atelier 10, we were extremely excited to join MoMA and the design team to help develop the sustainable design approach for the project. And the primary sustainability goals included enhanced indoor environmental quality, reductions in energy use, cost, and carbon emissions, and water conservation. And the project team also incorporated strategies for lower environmental impact materials, construction waste recycling, as well as site-focused strategies. So all of these design, construction, and operational strategies culminated in a LEED Platinum certification for the MoMA expansion under version 3 for commercial interiors. And we, as the full project team, were extremely proud of that achievement. The first phase of the renovations in the East End that Jean was discussing was completed in 2017. And then the second phase of the LEED Platinum expansion on the West End that you see highlighted in this section was completed and open to the public in the fall of 2019. And you can see the various spaces that were being described and that were incorporated into this new Western portion of the museum. The vertically stacked gallery spaces that interlocked at varying heights, the engaging street level galleries, and dedicated projects room, galleries for contemporary design, this fully customized studio space, and a 6th floor lounge and dining area with an outdoor terrace. So lots of great additional programming and gallery space to accommodate the museum's collection. The flagship museum store here was lowered one level from the previous location, making it a new double height space. And this allowed for more visual connection between the lobby and the street level. You can also see in this section the blade staircase that serves to vertically connect the galleries in the new expansion and marks the threshold of the new expansion to the west. This stair itself is a vibrant urban sculpture and definitely enhances the circulation route and the visitor experience of the space. The Museum of Modern Art is located in Midtown Manhattan in an extremely dense area of the city, as you can see from these aerial views. And given the project location, there were some unique constraints as well as opportunities for the design of the building to integrate into the existing urban fabric. So by building and expanding onto previously developed sites, the project minimized its impact on the natural environment. Additionally, the project is extremely well served by various pedestrian walking routes, extensive bus, subway, bike networks. So all of these enabled the museum to encourage other forms of transit for access and avoid any dedicated parking for serving the visitors of the museum. The renovation of the existing lobby also creates a welcoming transition to the sculpture garden, which you see here, which gives visitors a place for relaxation and mental restoration within the bustling city. and high albedo hardscape materials were incorporated into this garden, and shade trees also help reduce the heat island effect. Additionally, the new terrace within the expansion helps further connect museum visitors with the urban environment. So the design did try to celebrate the connection to the landscape and the unique site conditions given the site constraints. As I mentioned before, indoor environmental quality was of utmost importance to the project. The design prioritized the health, wellness of staff, visitors, and the artwork. And during the design process, the design team met with MoMA Conservation to understand the unique priorities for the fine art collection, which included specific conditioning requirements and air quality goals. The team balanced these goals for the artwork conservation with strategies for improved occupant comfort and health. So for example, the project included low-emitting materials wherever possible for wet-applied products, flooring, composite wood, and furniture. The mechanical design included 30% increased ventilation rates compared to ASHRAE 62.1, and included carbon dioxide sensors in densely occupied spaces to ensure that sufficient outside air was being delivered to these occupied zones. The set points for conditioning were maintained for thermal comfort of occupants as well as for artwork preservation. MERV 15 filters were installed on outside air to filter that air and ensure better indoor air quality. Entryway walk-off systems were incorporated at regularly used building entrances to help minimize any tracking of contaminants from visitors walking in off the street. Active design was definitely celebrated within the project, as seen in this photo of the blade staircase. The stair really did serve as a piece of art in itself, with a monumental physical presence as well as a structural lightness, and there was extreme attention to detail taken in the design of this staircase to make it an inviting and welcoming experience for the visitors. And then site and landscape connectivity was also an important element of the design, trying to bring in daylight where feasible to spaces that allowed for that given programming. So circulation, more the lobby space and retail store all had access to daylight, as well as some specific daylit galleries where artwork was more flexible in terms of lighting requirements. And then for energy and water use, the project did strive to achieve significant reductions in energy and water use through the project. Museums, especially those with fine art collections like MoMA, typically would have high energy use intensity associated with the strict conditioning criteria. So during the design process, Atelier 10 conducted energy analyses and updates to help identify drivers of energy use and inform the energy efficiency measures. So overall, through modeling efforts, the project demonstrated a 35% reduction in annual energy consumption compared to an ASHRAE 90.1 2007 baseline design. That was with an anticipated energy use intensity of 90 kBTU per square foot per year, which translated to a 48% reduction in energy costs, which is quite substantial, contributing to 23 LEED points. So you can see here the comparison between the baseline design and the proposed design, energy end uses, and we were able to achieve significant reductions in cooling energy as well as heating energy with efficient chillers and water side economizer. Additionally, the galleries were served by variable air volume systems with air side economizing, which definitely helped contribute to these heating and cooling reductions as well. We also achieved reductions in fan energy with high efficiency variable speed fans, and the lighting design is 100% LED. So that paired with automatic lighting controls in the regularly occupied spaces helped to contribute to lighting energy reductions as well. And then lastly, domestic hot water was reduced by installing low flow fixtures. So from a water use reduction perspective, the project, given the high intensity use of the space and the number of daily visitors, we were also trying to specify as low flow fixtures as possible for toilets, lavatory faucets, some kitchen sinks, and select areas with urinals. And we specified low flow plumbing fixtures not only for the new expansion, but also worked with MoMA to integrate low flow fixtures into some restroom renovations within the existing building. For operations and maintenance, MoMA had a really strong program already focused on sustainability. And so as part of the expansion project, we worked to identify areas to further refine and improve their approach to operations and maintenance. So for storage and collection of recyclables, MoMA already managed a very active and environmentally conscious recycling program, recycling lamps, batteries, and e-waste, as well as other ongoing consumables. We worked to continue to have the expansion support those goals in terms of collection areas for recycling. No smoking policy continued to be implemented in the building, and the communication of an exterior no smoking policy was further refined as part of the expansion project. Energy submeters were included to help with data tracking in the future, and the museum committed to purchasing renewable energy credits to offset 100% of the 2-year electricity use associated with the project. Additionally, to ensure thermal comfort of building occupants, surveys were distributed to staff to make sure that set points were maintaining occupant comfort. And we also refined the green cleaning program that was already in place to help make it more stringent and refine the types of requirements and products that could be used for cleaning practices.
So where do we go from there? What Rebecca was just explaining was really just the expansion part of the museum, and we still had a remaining campus and a building out in Queens that we need to still address. So we've used the project and the LEED Platinum certification as a jumping off point now to take the museum into the future around sustainability. And we developed a 5-year plan that focused on 3 components: reducing the energy that we are using, and even though we've achieved a big reduction in the expansion, we're addressing it in the rest of the museum now as well. And then the energy that we do need to continue to use, how do we use that in the most efficient way? How do we optimize that energy use? Our director gave us a goal in right before the pandemic started in early 2020 to reduce our waste by 50% by 2025. And that ends up being about 150 tons a year. So it's a huge amount of waste that we need to start to put a plan together, and we have started to address. And then everything is great, and we've got to make sure, though, that our work engages our colleagues and our visitors and continues to support the mission of the museum. So we're not doing this in a vacuum. We're looking at our utilization and our opportunities to reduce in the context of the broader mission of the museum. Next slide, please. So just quickly, because I know we're kind of bumping up on time, but we've got a pretty ambitious 5-year plan. Like I said, we're jumping off from the LEED Platinum certification that Atelier 10 led the effort to help us to achieve. Our zero waste goal is basically all across the museum, and we've got the opportunity, we've learned recently by doing a waste audit of an exhibition that we demoed, that we can achieve through conscious planning and handling the demolition material, zero waste for our exhibition. So that's a goal that we're going to try to achieve and maintain. We've developed a very conscious energy procurement strategy to make sure that the energy that we are going to buy we buy it in the right way, we buy the right mix of energy, and we buy it in a way that's flexible. So as we continue to move towards our reduction goals, that our procurement strategy is aligned with that. And for those of you that are in New York, you know that New York City has a very aggressive climate mobilization act. And there's a component of that called Local Law 97, which targets a reduction in building emissions with 2 thresholds, one in 2024 and one in 2030. So we're kind of filing all of that underneath this reducing waste by 50% by 2025, understanding that waste is much more than just the waste, the solid waste stream. And just to make a note of what we're doing around solid waste, we actually are implementing, we were a single stream waste facility, and we've gotten a lot more granular now. We are doing on-site separation of our recyclables, and we've started an organics composting program. And just in the 60 plus days that that's been in place, we've already diverted 6 tons of waste from the landfill. So we feel that this is going to be a great opportunity for us going forward. And we also know that you can't manage what you don't measure. So we're going to be putting kind of interim metrics around all of these goals. We make sure that we stay on track, we stay on target, and we're able to communicate and socialize what we're doing and course correct if we need to. The other thing that we've realized is that because of the age of the existing infrastructure in the museum, we've got a capital plan that we need to develop for equipment replacement starting in the next couple of years. And that's giving us a really great opportunity to overlay a lens of sustainability on that capital plan. So as we start to have to replace the equipment, we do it in a much more efficient way. We replace the equipment in the right way so we can start to build on efficiencies as we continue to go forward. And that's going to be a rolling plan. So we're very excited about that. And frankly, at the end of the day, this is all great, but we just want to make sure that we're engaging our departments, because we can just do what we know from the infrastructure side. But the opportunity is really in the dialogue with the individual departments at the museum, as well as our visitors, to create an institutional change in how we look at things, how we present our exhibitions, how we operate, and how we engage for the future. So next slide. So just to wrap up, I want to again thank everybody, thank the AAM for this amazing award and for this opportunity to share the project with all of you.
Yes, thank you.
And please join us at MoMA.
Thank you both. This was a really stunning example of how metrics assessments can make a place more beautiful while enhancing the lives of the folks in and around the building, those folks that are interacting with it. Rachel, did we have any questions from our attendees for Jean or Rebecca?
We did. We have a question regarding cleaning protocols. So the attendee writes, we're in a historic house looking to recreate our cleaning practices, and we're looking for all eco-friendly products and streamlining cleaning protocols. Would you be willing to share your green cleaning program?
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but if you could connect me with that individual, I'd be happy to have a dialogue and maybe set them up with our operations team to talk more and more detail about it.
Great, we'll plan to do that.
In terms of the criteria, the plan, we did definitely use the LEED framework as a guiding tool for that. So LEED has existing building operations maintenance system that has specific criteria recommendations for green cleaning. And so that could be a good resource as well.
And we have one more question, wondering about the zero waste exhibitions and whether that includes more movable, reusable wall systems or recycling the materials used for temporary exhibition walls.
All of the above. We actually, our exhibition team has developed an evergreen program. So it's reusing as much as we possibly can. It's not changing and working within kind of a more scripted framework of wall types and gallery layouts. And it's recycling, reusing first, and then recycling as much material as possible.
That's it for questions at this point.
Great, thank you. So next we are going to move on to the Burke. We have Kate Fernandez, the Director of Interpretation and Visitor Experience at the Burke, and Justin Helmbrecht, Associate and Project Manager for the design firm Olson Kundig. The Burke has an inventive and thoughtful inside-out approach to sustainability, and that's reflected in the museum and on the grounds. So Kate and Justin, thank you for joining us today. And could you please expand on this mindset and how you work to embody this in the museum?
Happily. Thank you so much, Kate, and all of AAM for having us here today. We're really excited to be able to share and talk about our project to turn the museum inside out. I'm Kate Fernandez, Director of Interpretation and Visitor Experience, and I'm joined here with Justin. The next slide, it just shows the larger project team with whom this project was conceived of. There were many people, the entire staff of the Burke Museum, led by our executive director, Julie Stein, and the architecture firm whom we worked very closely with throughout this process to really bring this vision to life. Again, led by Tom Kundig, design principal, and the many architects whom you see here. We also had an incredible team of collaborators and partners and consultants on this project who really helped us guide us through this grand vision that we had, and helped us to kind of identify something that for a long time no one knew we would be able, no one thought we would be able to do. So to help get us started and to shed a little light on what we mean by turning the museum inside out, we have a short video that will introduce this concept and hopefully give you a good overview before we get started on our the details of this project.
The Burke Museum stands on the lands of the Coast Salish peoples, whose ancestors resided here since time immemorial. Many indigenous peoples thrive in this place, alive and strong.
The Burke Museum is the oldest museum in Washington. It was started in 1883, and we now have 16 million objects that are from biology to fossils and our culture, especially objects of Northwest Coast native art and archaeology. The true goal of this building was to provide people access to what they couldn't see in the old building. I said, I'm imagining that there'll be windows and that it will just be transparent. I want to give the experience of a behind-the-scenes tour to every person in the museum.
This is a museum that's all about transparency and all about clarity. It's about the soul of the building. Well, as soon as she said something about looking through a building, immediately that raised all sorts of issues of transparency and porosity. Sometimes I refer to it as the Swiss cheese kind of analogy, where there's a bunch of holes in different places. Now those holes are somewhat strategically located to be transparent, but it's also supposed to be protective.
When we turned the museum inside out, our goal was to remove the barriers that have existed in the past and reveal the inner workings of what it is that we do here, and bring people closer both to our process and make all of our collections more accessible to the public.
We have had a tradition here at the Burke of involving communities who are the descendants of the people who made the objects that are in our culture collection. We're very fortunate to have Polly Olson, who is our tribal liaison, who went to the Native American communities and to various Pacific Island communities and said, how can I help you and how can you help us do this correctly?
To be the tribal liaison for a museum of natural history and culture is really a new leadership for a museum, to actually have a conversation about living culture around the traumas that museums have imposed upon Indigenous communities, and changing those conversations to be a conversation of healing, a conversation of cultural resilience. Bringing tribes and communities in, we're able to add another layer of information that has never been accessed or shared, that can be carried on for future generations to access.
In the past, museums have always privileged the objects, and so that's why they're dark. And we finally said, and I said, why are we privileging the object? Let's privilege the visitor. So Tom Kundig, our architect, put skylights right down the middle of the central seam of the building and pours light down the middle.
The design of this building really captures two halves of the Burke identity. It feels very orderly, it's very clean, and that's very much a part of our process of caring for collections. And at the same time, it really reveals the guts of the building. You see the ductwork, you see the exposed beams, and that's 100% what we're doing as we bring you into the process.
All right, so you've got to see a little bit behind the concept and really the great foundation that the Burke had already set out for us as a design team. I do want to note that this project did achieve LEED Gold, but I hope our presentation is a great complement to the one that MoMA just did that dove into a lot of energy efficiencies, system efficiencies. We decided to focus today, because sustainability is such a complex issue, on some of the spatial efficiencies that we looked to gather, how we could edit this building down to achieve the goal that the Burke was looking for, but also use that to drive our sustainability efforts. And then also, that this project really looks at the social engagement and responsibility to the greater community, which is referenced in the LEED program, but is even referenced more in the COAT Top 10 program that is coming out and is really coming into the forefront of sustainability. So, you know, this is a great follow-up to MoMA because it really does provide the whole picture of and range of sustainability in a project. So this is the design concept for the Burke in a diagram. And if you're starting on the left, the Burke, the old Burke building was really a building that was segregated into the exhibit spaces and then the collections and research spaces. And our job from an architecture standpoint was to unpack that to create the inside out museum that really allowed the patrons of the museum, the users of the museums, the researchers and scientists, greater transparency and accessibility to the collections of the museum. And really our goal was, again, you can see in the floor plan here, was to break down traditional barriers between archive spaces and exhibitions and blur the boundary between the two, where you can actually see 60% of the back of the house spaces from the exhibits themselves. You'll see as we move on into the presentation that the project is really about engaging the public and the researchers and their interactions in the museum through visual transparency, through windows into labs and collection spaces, and also even doors that open up labs and invite people to the inside of the back of house spaces as well. And this is kind of a an after shot, if you will, of people engaging the research labs. You'll also notice that the way we helped reduce square footage in this building, as well as the building has galleries at the north and south end of the building, but we connected them with an experience pathway that becomes not only circulation, but also gallery space as well. So what that did is it allowed us to make our building more efficient. I think in this building, our unprogrammed space is something like 12 to 10% of the building, where in a traditional building, that might be upwards of 20%.
To help us really understand how we could pull this off, how this, the idea of pulling back the walls on a museum would work, we needed to first test it. And this was a critical step in both bringing all of our staff along and making sure that each of us understood how that would affect our work, but also how it would change the visitor experience and how our processes there in terms of working with our guests would change. And so we built an exhibit that was up for 6 months prior to our close during the move of the museum, that allowed staff from across the museum, all staff from across the museum, to work in public. And we did our best to replicate what it would be like to work in a space with floor to ceiling windows. And then we watched our visitors as they interacted with the various static exhibits and the live people who are doing their daily work. And it taught us many important lessons that helped to make sure that this greater goal was successful. We learned here that the real thing, seeing people at work, was the most compelling thing we could put up on display. And so that really taught us how to lean into making sure that our work was visible and also that our staff was protected and supported in doing this. In the next slide, it showed us how the static signage that supports the exhibits was not even as important as the people who were doing the work. Everything that we put in front of the glass to test out to see what might be the most interesting story or message to tell about people working was just never as exciting as a person doing that work. And then last, it also showed us that the things that we thought people might not be interested in were really compelling. Here we have something that we were very trepidatious to show, but it's the work we do with live specimens as animal specimens. They are not live and we're working on them, but we're very concerned about how people would react. And here we were able to work in a very small scale environment, working with kind of simple things one at a time. And they would, and time again, we found that people would flock to the windows, watch, and ask really thoughtful questions. And this helped us build a practice of understanding how to support the visitors in their process, support the staff in this process, and ultimately really drive that, that attention and energy to the work that we're doing. The next slide here also, as we gained confidence and showed kind of like revealed what we're doing with the museum, it gave us the confidence then to remove even further barriers. So on the next slide, here you can see another lab room where the windows, the floor to ceiling windows that separate the workspaces from the public also open. And so we have large sliding doors and strategic areas that allow visitors to not only watch what we're doing, but engage with what we're doing. And we use this as strategic moments throughout our visitor experience to continue to bring the public into our work. Pass it back to you, Justin.
All right. Well, of course, I love to tell the story of living in Seattle for about a decade and driving by the Burke and wondering the old Burke and wondering what was happening inside. And of course, we had the new privilege now in the new Burke Museum to really open up the building envelope to help the exhibits and collections become visible from the exterior. We'll discuss in a little bit how we have a campus side and then also an urban side of this building as well. But this is a view into the paleontology gallery from a lantern high up on the building. And then conversely, when you're inside the gallery spaces, that you're always connected to the greater community outside and landscape as well. So much of the exterior motif of this building follows the language of the native trees and the verticality of the trees. And as you're in the galleries as well, you experience the canopies of the trees that are around as well. You know, tying what's happening on the inside of the museum again into the greater nature and community that's surrounding. And then just to dive in a little bit to a little bit of the data and nitty gritty is, of course, as the MoMA team talked about, so much of a museum's challenge in energy is through energy use because of the stringent criteria of the humidity and temperature set points. And this is just a spreadsheet that we had during our design development to work with the different departments of the Burke Museum in all their different spaces to really identify what the maximum and minimum relative humidity and temperature set points can be. And in working over in museum projects over the last decades, it's really amazing to see how the museum community has begun to stretch some of this criteria, and that objects can still be conserved and energy can be conserved as well. So it's a lot about finding the balance between those two. And this image illustrates the variety of collections that the Burke Museum has, starting on the left, the biology collection, specifically mammalogy here, and the collection management cases, and then the middle image seeing through again to biology, but to some of the skeletal remains that you see from the exhibits, looking back through the collections spaces. And then the image on the right are cultural baskets that are very sensitive to humidity, temperature fluctuations, and light as well. As we move to the outside of the building, again, I spoke of this a little bit earlier, but I really want to focus on the material of the wood siding. As we started out this project, I can remember when I came onto this project, the design was actually brick because we thought that the university in their material palette required brick. But we all thought together, wouldn't it be a shame if a natural history museum did not have wood siding or a natural material for siding? So this product is Kebony. It is acetylated pine that essentially allows this wood siding to go unfinished and to have a longevity of 60+ years. With no maintenance on the coating, which was just a big focus of what we were looking at. What are the life cycle costs of this building? What is the maintenance cycle of this building? And a couple things we want to point out from a social responsibility standpoint is that the slope of the parapet of the building, the rake, if you will, is derived from native tribe building methods, as is the lap that occurs every 10 feet in the siding as well. It's also represents other detailing methods that local tribes used as well. It's a great benefit because it breaks down the scale of the building, but as we went through the design process and we were really forced to edit this building down, we asked ourselves, what are the really important design elements? And those are some key design elements that we kept throughout the process.
Thanks, Justin. Here we have a display of our biology storage workrooms, and throughout this project, we continued to be very purposeful, both with the design intent, but also our resources. We are on the University of Washington campus. This is technically a government state-owned building, and so it did not have an unlimited budget. And so as we were building out our new collection storage spaces, which increased every department's ability to store current and future collections, we were able to bring over almost the majority of our existing casework, which saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then add on to it and still leave room to add more. So this was a really important cost savings. effort for our project that also allowed us to continue growing. The next slide shows and highlights the gallery casework, which also solved a problem for us, which historically had been plagued with the challenges of being too difficult to access, too expensive to update, and had gone into some degree of neglect. And so at every turn in our exhibits design, we really strived to think about how we could allow for some degree of modularity and ease of updates. So this casework, especially the tall cases, allow us to easily open the doors and have a system of floating shelves that can adjust by several people easily to allow us to swap objects in and out frequently. The last slide is some material that we brought over from the old Burke. It's of historic significance, but somewhat odd for our collection. It's 17th century boiserie paneling that lined the former cafe, and it was beloved. It had a community of its own admirers. And so we knew, even though it was a little adjacent to our core mission, it was an important aspect of our collection and iconic in that way. So it now lines a sliding panel door that allows us to use a multi-purpose room in a new way. So it can slide all the way closed and become a large wall, and it displays this paneling in all its glory, or it can be compacted back to open up the room and allow the public to flow in and out of it.
All right. Well, of course, the challenge with adding transparency to a building is daylighting, especially in a museum. This is one of the double height entry spaces, and we organized the collections with the Burke to locate items that could be within daylight zones very carefully for their longevity. In this space, there are shades that are on solar sensors and astronomical time clocks that deploy at different times during the day to protect the collection. But again, it was that balance of the desire for transparency, but also to conserve and protect artifacts. And in the video, you really saw how important this spine skylight is to bring daylight down 60 feet into the building. What we wanted to point out here is the skylight itself is view glass, which is self-tinting glass that is connected to a solar sensor on the roof and has 4 tinting stages, again, to help preserve the collections. And then back to the facade again, a couple points. We wanted to make sure we had welcoming entries. This particular side is the campus side, which has a cafe with a large kinetic door that opens up to allow the cafe to completely open up to the plaza in front of us. And then another point here is that the old Burke did not have natural ventilation into any of the offices. And one of the key tenets of the office spaces in the new building is that every office has an operable window that the user can open. And we're going to move on now to close in the site and context. The old Burke was situated much closer to the campus side of our site, and it was always separated from the community and urban fabric by a parking lot. And the new Burke is situated along a main arterial road, 15th Avenue, here in the University District, and engages the campus as well now as the urban fabric. And this is a great shot showing downtown Seattle in the background and the University of Washington in the foreground. Seattle hasn't been that well connected with public transportation methods other than bus routes because of lakes and hills. the city is working on connecting via a light rail system, and the Burke is situated right next to a new light rail station that is to open in the next year. And this pedestrian avenue just to the south of the Burke will then become a main entry to the University of Washington.
One of the other things we were able to do, because the location of our new building was just across an existing parking lot from our original building, so we physically moved the museum by hand. And all staff and volunteers helped us do that. So here you can see one of our collection manager bagging up the drawers from our Delta cabinets. And we actually built a system of reusable, we called them cows, that we were able to load these shelves into and then walk across a smooth and newly built paved roadway that led right to the loading dock of our new building. And we did that for 10 months, physically moving the majority of the museum by hand.
Native Landscapes, our partner on the project, GGN, designed a beautiful landscape for this project that utilizes native drought-tolerant plants. And the plants really become an extension of the museum. They become an interpretive landscape where you can see the seat steps over to the right, where patrons go down and explore the landscape. And Kate will talk about a really special moment here in just a few slides. But the plantings are so native, in fact, that the University of Washington, when they're doing their maintenance, often questions whether a plant is a native plant or a weed, because the landscape architect is really working on educating the general public to all the plants that are native to our area. Bioretention and water strategy for the site became a large issue for us. The city of Seattle requires that all water leaving the site be filtered through bioretention or rain gardens before it goes into the city stormwater system if it can't be infiltrated on site. In our case, we were all on glacial till soil, which did not infiltrate. So every inch of site that we touched, whether it was a pervious pavement surface or new landscaping, had to be filtered through the bioretention planters before it was discharged into the stormwater system. This is an aerial image showing those bioretention planters. They're the concrete cells that are stepping down the south side of the site. All the site water is collected and piped to these cells, and then that water is filtered through the plants and soil in these cells and then discharged at the low end to the city stormwater system.
So as Justin mentioned, from early on, we knew that this landscape was significant, and we heard from our Native advisors and our Native American Advisory Board that we needed to plant camas. Camas is a first food used by people across the state of Washington, and they strongly encouraged us to ensure that this landscape could be a place where that plant could grow and people could learn from it. And so our advisors were involved throughout this process of creating and cultivating this garden. On the left, you see a group of elders who are singing to the plants at the nursery in their infant state and getting them ready for their journey ahead. And on the right, in community with our advisors and other stakeholders, we held a planting ceremony to put them into the ground and bring them to their new home. On the next slide, years later, as the landscape takes root and begins to grow, we have an interesting problem where we learn that the lupin, which the camas was co-planted with, is very happy. And in fact, so happy it begins to overtake the camas garden. And we are a university campus, and this the space is controlled by university grounds and maintenance, but we worked first with our Native advisors to talk through what we should do. And they helped guide us in this process of recognizing that we needed to remove the lupin, which was squelching the camas, and make sure that it had enough space and breadth to thrive. And it's in this way that the museum becomes this working model for thinking about new ways that we can build sustainable practices and relationships that help us grow our knowledge, not just for keeping an institution and a building running and a garden green, but really developing that shared knowledge as to how we work together, not just to turn the museum inside out, but to bring the community in. So with that, in closing, we have this wonderful building that we've built purposefully and transparently, both in our process. It was a 10-year conversation with our greater community and with the incredible work of our partners at Olson Kundig Evidence Design as our exhibit designers. And we're poised now at the foot of the next future light rail station, ready for that the transition, as Seattle recently was just named the fastest growing city in the United States, to start talking about these issues in our new facility. We've taken down the barriers to show you how we do it, and now we're ready to do that, to have that conversation with the greater community at large. Thank you all. We are open to the public. We have returned to work as almost normal now at the Burke Museum, and we welcome your questions.
Thank you, Kate and Justin. Thank you very much. I know in jury discussions, we felt that the Burke had a very organic approach to sustainability and really illustrates how sustainability is systems-based and should incorporate its community. It's not just the physical features of the building. So it's a beautiful example of a space coming into its own. Before I pass the mic to Rachel for attendee questions, I did see in the chat that someone asked if you are able to share the link of the video that you showed in the beginning of your presentation, if that's at all possible.
I'll check with our communication staff, and Trisha, I'll make a note of your contact information, and hopefully we can connect.
Perfect. Rachel, did we have anything from our attendees?
We did. The first question was dropped in the Q&A before you spoke about daylighting, Justin, but I wonder if there's any more that you or Kate want to add here. How did you handle the introduction of natural light into gallery spaces in relation to the conservation of objects?
Do you want to take that from a museum standpoint, Kate?
Sure. Yeah, it was a conversation, and I think one that required careful study from every collection. And I think, as one of the kind of working phrases we have, is that there's really no one size fits all for a museum like the Burke, which has 16 million objects. So we made strategic decisions throughout our display process. Some of the exhibits are oriented in a way that puts highly sensitive objects in the shadow or in the shade of incoming light. Justin mentioned the shades that are on a schedule. So our building, which faces north and south, we actually are dropping and lowering shades every day as the sun moves over the building and the light moves directly through the windows. But we also did a solar study, and we looked at the light intensity at this very specific site, and that allowed us to understand what the impact would be on every floor in the building. And it helped us set levels for threshold inside the building, turning up or lowering down the additional LED exhibit lighting that's layered into the site. And then last, we also, because we built this system that's so highly flexible and dynamic, we have a really rigorous rotation schedule. And we planned for objects that are more sensitive to be rotating on a more frequent basis than others, which can withstand longer periods of display time.
Great. And one last question. What kind of impacts, negative or positive, did the opening up of staff working behind the scenes to public scrutiny and interaction have? Were there effects on productivity? What kind of controls had to be developed, and how did those evolve?
Great question. Well, that's a whole nother talk, but in a nutshell, it was scary. We were really changing people's jobs. And so the testing exhibit helped us to understand just the extent of which change would be. I think as anyone wrestles with the unknown, you think it's going to be terrible. We're going to fail. We can't do it. But we found really the result was more specific, right? Like, oh, this one thing that visitors always do is kind of annoying. And that allowed us to then work back from the experience side and say, okay, great. That's something we can train for, and we can find ways that our staff can support you and minimize this type of unwanted behavior. The other thing we did is we spent a lot of time just talking about our findings and the things that we were learning. And we used those results and that information gained to develop training. And we continually train staff over time to build up both their comfort working in these spaces, but also to gain new skills in working with the public and representing the museum in a new way as they came out of offices that were once very private and are now very public.
Right, so thanks again to the Burke. And our final presenter for today is Jean Ponzi from the Missouri Botanical Garden. Jean is the Green Resources Manager for the garden, and she's the manager of the Green Business Challenge, which won the programming category this year. Jean, your work is very exciting, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Kate. On behalf of the Missouri Botanical Garden and all of the companies and nonprofits and municipalities that are participants in the St. Louis Green Business Challenge, thanks so much to the American Alliance of Museums Environment and Community Network for recognizing our work with this award. It is a deep honor to so many people in the St. Louis region. So the challenge is a program of the Missouri Botanical Garden. It was launched in 2010. It was actually launched by our St. Louis Regional Chamber, which is the Meta Chamber of Commerce in St. Louis that is now part actually of a larger organization called Greater St. Louis, Inc. The program has been managed by the Garden since 2017. We were a partner in the program from the outset, and we took it over in 2017. And I have had the privilege of working with this program and all of the participants in it for that entire lifespan. This is an initiative to advance sustainability in practice and in policy across the St. Louis regional economy. And it arose at a very fortunate time. 2010 was just over the crest of the wave of sustainability becoming a standard in the business world. The U.S. Green Building Council had laid a phenomenal foundation through their work with their LEED rating systems at every level in engaging the many kinds of specialties in the building industry in sustainability in practice and policy. But when we got to the table in 2010 with the St. Louis Green Business Challenge, things had happened, like Walmart, the world's largest retailer, had begun requiring all of their suppliers to participate in GRI, the most rigorous sustainability reporting process. And that was suppliers like Unilever and Kraft. So sustainability had come out of the shadows and become a mainstream, had begun to be a major tool for doing business in 21st century environments and with the kinds of requirements that we're now dealing with now that have to do with community resiliency, climate change, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and much more. Green teams are the anchor of activity in the challenge, and that teamwork, that collaboration, relying on one another, bringing resources from diverse parts of any company or organization, that is sustainability embodied. So we have always had green teams as the leadership unit, and our green team at the Garden and our expertise is a multiplier. So it's kind of a hub and spoke multiplier. One of the greatest strengths of the challenge is the fact that while we are dealing with every company with the same body of resources, the same body of material and potentials, operational potentials, we relate to every single participant in a customized way. We provide site visits to get a feel on site for, what's in the supply closets? How are things displayed on the wall? What is the culture of a place, which has so much bearing on how sustainability works? And what are each participant's unique goals, which have been evolving over time? That customized coaching and service has always been a hallmark of what we do in all of our programs at the Missouri Botanical Gardens Earthway Center, from schools now to businesses to responding individually to people's sustainability questions. And that has worked very well. Also makes our program very staff intensive, which means that you have to have a significant financial base to do a program like this, but there are some transferable elements. We have had 250 companies participate in the challenge to date. Most of those have participated in the program for multiple years. Over 60% have been in the program for 3 or more years. And there are a dozen companies that have been leaders in sustainability through this program and using its resources to grow their own sustainability capacity for all 12 years of the program. Activity starts with a scorecard. You put all the green you could, you should on a list, put it in categories, give it point values. This is the coin of the realm that has been so successful with the U.S. Green Building Council's LEED rating system, with sustainable sites, with WELL building systems, with programs that allow business persons to be strategic, to divvy up tasks, to give things timelines, and to say, we're doing this already. We're going to try for this. This is not exactly where we want to be, but this is our stretch goal. So the scorecard as a basic tool has allowed for that flexibility. We're working in the Green Business Challenge with the kinds of day-to-day operations that are common to every business. That's where our expertise lies, and that's the common thread. And then we have the opportunity to learn about the business specialties of all of the participants that bring their experience to the challenge and that share their sustainability experience through what they do. And the list of kinds of measures that are addressed through the challenge is quite comprehensive. I have to say, I'm most proud of the fact that we shoehorned biodiversity in there in 2012, our initiative, Better Business Through Biodiversity, as an outgrowth of the Garden's own leadership of a regional biodiversity initiative here in St. Louis. And this is all voluntary. We are lacking many of the drivers that other parts of the country have that are promoting sustainability as a business standard. We have some of the lowest utility rates in the country. Water is extremely plentiful and extremely inexpensive here, which is a humongous gift. We have very low landfill tipping fees, and we have few, if any, of the kinds of regulatory drivers that a part of the country like California would be applying to the initiative for businesses to green up their operations. So the fact that every participant is electing to do things voluntarily is something that we are very proud of and we really respect. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is a way to grow very deep roots for sustainability in business practice. We're drawing on our own experience as an institution that does business, that has contracts. And this is mission true. The mission of the Missouri Botanical Garden is to discover and share knowledge about plants and their environment in order to preserve and enrich life. So we are the environment part of that mission, applied in this case to working with businesses and help them problem solve and actually help them use the kind of logic that plants embody and demonstrate, moving individual plants from one environment to the other, same plants, different performance in different environments. And parts of the garden that bring this specialty forth, my division, the Earthway Center, our sustainability division, the U.S. Green Building Council, Missouri Gateway chapter is also a part of the Missouri Botanical Garden and our Earthway Center and does business under that umbrella. So we have a considerable wealth of sustainability knowledge and expertise to draw from in our professional specialties and in the way our institution does business. We have evolved participation levels over the life of the program to continue to engage participants and be of service to them as their capacity and their sustainability depth and breadth evolves. We started with that scorecard I showed you a few moments ago. That used to be the bread and butter, the it of the challenge. We now call that our leader level. We added an apprentice level, kind of a toe in the water for companies just looking to get involved with sustainability, originally aimed at smaller businesses. But frankly, you need the person power, you need the number of people to form a green team to really make this work. So smaller businesses is a sector that we have worked with, not as much as hopefully we still will. We added our Green Cities Challenge in 2015, working specifically with tailored to meet the needs of municipalities where you have elected officials, city staff, and engaged citizens, very distinct groups of stakeholders that operate within different parameters, but that all have input into city business operations. And then at our champion level, that is scorecard, it is process we've evolved to continue to be of service to high performing companies, including a champion innovation project, which allows a company that has sustainability very well integrated to focus on and report on and share their process of one project that they do in the course of a program year. The challenge created, this was something that was a surprise to me. I didn't expect this in the first year. Immediately in that first year, we had a professional network of sustainability leaders that ran the gamut from C-suite to contractors, to part-time to interns, and covered almost every level of specialization that we worked with. Companies that are working in the sustainability space, that are providing products or services that help advance sustainability for other businesses, really have a marketing advantage in the challenge. They're able to showcase who they are, what they know it, how they do it, and do that without a selling atmosphere. And that is something that those companies appreciate, and everyone, frankly, appreciates. This is not, you don't pay to play and then get a foot in the door to sell your stuff, but you really have a marketing advantage in that B2B space. Recognition is a huge part of the challenge. We have published every year a book of accomplishments and innovations. And we took a leaf, again, from the process of the US Green Building Council. When you get a project LEED certified, you get a template into which you can plug photos and quotes, testimonials, bullet lists of elements in that project that allow you to have a wonderful snapshot of the work that you did. We adapted that. Every company gets a page in our accomplishment book every year, and they can choose, and we help work with them to help them choose which things to best spotlight. And then we make awards every year. For almost the entire life of the program, those awards have been awards of achievement, recognizing the work of every participant, and then awards of merit, recognizing those who gained the most points over the program year using our leader scorecard, or got the highest level points with our champion scorecard, or did a champion innovation project. In the pandemic year, that all had to be modified because of everything that we know that happened in that year. So last year, we made one award to every company, honoring commitment to sustainability. We were all sustaining sustainability through extreme constraints that everyone was dealing with, and some very unique constraints that hit some industries especially hard. So we are looking at how we're going to handle recognition this year, as we have not returned to full in-person work in the St. Louis region. We've also done our best to publicize the challenge. That's something, frankly, we can always do more of, and this recognition from AAM has been a great contributor to it. Conference presentations are another way that we get the word out, talking about what is happening in business in St. Louis through the challenge and through the work of specific companies. And we're always happy to contribute to conferences and seminars in that way. You're growing a level of green literacy when you do work in the challenge. We're really the ABCs. We're kind of the elementary school of the challenge. But then when you grow that literacy in that capacity, how do you apply that? In practice and in policy. I like to use the word policy. That's the highest level of verbiage, but you could call it best practices. You could call it guidelines. Some green teams don't have the authority to set policy within their companies. And then there are other green teams like our colleagues at the Missouri Historical Society, fellow AAM member, that achieved zero waste certification in a museum with their housekeeping team leading that process. St. Patrick's Center, a challenge participant that is a social service agency working to help individuals out of homelessness, working to leverage the experience of the challenge as training workshops, and to also leverage their connections to help grow a network of client placement. And then installation of renewable energy at a champion level, driving climate protecting sustainability practice in so many ways that are visible and that are also efficiencies and cost savings for the companies that do them. Service is a big part of what we encourage within the challenge. You get points on the scorecard for taking green home, for measures that educate employees about things that they can do in their lives that they have experienced in the workplace. And especially during the pandemic year, those engagement resources were a crucial part of what our green teams relied on. Service pivoted in some instances. Graybar, our presenting sponsor, had planned to focus on environmental service action with environmental organizations on the ground, hands-on kind of cleanup services. What they did was they marshaled the resources of their industry, electrical products development and distribution, and they listed the kinds of PPE they identified sources of the kinds of PPE that were commonly used in their industry, gathered that from their clients and their network of vendors and suppliers, and made that resource available to healthcare workers at a time when it was so urgently needed. Food bank support is another really, really popular service opportunity that we're seeing again this year. And then there are the hot tickets to service and engagement. The best one in our region has been the St. Louis Cardinals for a Greener Game initiative. You see the worldwide technology team, they're volunteering to go around the stands at Cardinals home games and collect recyclables, making that fundamental green practice so visible and so popular. Stream team cleanups, honeysuckle hacks, those are all outdoor engagement, tree planting activities, native plant, rainscaping garden planting activities on company campuses. Those are all things that are very, very popular for engagement. And we're really well positioned at the Earthway Center to provide those kinds of resources because we know so much about our partner organizations in St. Louis and the service needs that we have. We just published a new listing of about 20 different opportunities for environmental and community service between the end of summer and through the fall, and shared that with our companies. Reporting and documenting sustainability is a 21st century business imperative. And when we started out, this really wasn't in the minds of many of us in the challenge. But these are all examples of sustainability reports that challenge companies have done. In some instances, like Bunge, they have a global imperative to do that kind of tracking and reporting. Ameren, Missouri is prompted by EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute, to participate in sustainability metrics and reporting. Down on the bottom, you see the Certified Environmental Leader Program. That is a training program that Missouri American Water has adapted and is using in their own team in St. Louis, and is going to be rolling out as a resource for other American Water institutes. Cortex, literally an innovation district. It is a physical part of our community, is in the process of finalizing a sustainability action plan that is extraordinarily stakeholder driven, that is connecting to DEI and economic development and many other areas that are akin to sustainability. So this kind of formalization has now become common practice in the sporting world, in the investment world. companies that elect to become certified B Corps, which are again, a voluntary level of tracking and reporting, from Energy Star Portfolio Manager all the way up to GRI and CDP and industry-specific processes like Certified Green Printer. The challenge has developed that literacy and is helping to support the compilation and the distribution of that kind of documentation. And then our business sector is making green visible and popular, making it mainstream. So very, very important. We have been doing that for a while at the Missouri Botanical Garden. And again, we draw on that experience. Our transportation agencies, our arts organizations like COCA, the Center of Contemporary Art. You're seeing there a green roof in the middle of a major new studio and performance space extension that they built. So where the public goes, we are seeing green in action in the St. Louis region. It is becoming mainstream, and that is really critical. Process, collaboration, mainstream, and fun, enjoyable, valuable. Going beyond the individual action, that is the next call. That is the imperative as climate change becomes even more pressing and the human species is called upon to work together in ways we have never worked together before. All 5 institutions of our St. Louis Zoo Museum District are participants in the challenge. They have a group green team that is working and looking at ways that we could purchase together, that we could influence the audiences that we serve in our unique ways. We had a green job development collaborative project this spring between Focal Point Outdoor Solutions, St. Patrick's Center, and the Missouri Botanical Garden that planted a native garden on the grounds of Haven of Grace, another nonprofit that serves homeless women who are pregnant, and did that in a couple of months, pulling together multiple resources and making it happen. And then our municipalities are learning from one another. Granite City, Illinois developed a sustainability plan that neighboring Collinsville adapted and turned into an infographic that you see here on the screen. Webster Groves, Missouri is adapting that process and working on their own sustainability plan. So this is the future of what we're doing in the challenge as we continue with the standards and the established practices that have served our participants so well. Again, on behalf of the Missouri Botanical Garden and all of the participants in the St. Louis Green Business Challenge, thanks so much to AAM, to the Environment and Climate Network, for recognizing our work in the programs category this year. It is an honor that we accept on behalf of so many who are making green work efficiently, collaboratively, cost-effectively, and most importantly, beneficial to people, planet, and profit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. That was wonderful. I know as the programming committee was reviewing the application, we were really blown away by the sheer scope of the work that is accomplished. And while it is a very large and very long running program, it's the intersectionality and the enthusiastic voluntary participation that I think really sets a standard for community green engagement from cultural institutions.
Thank you.
Rachel, did we have any questions for Jean?
We did not have any questions in the Q&A, but I know our team was interested in just asking if you spoke to this a bunch, but just if there's any other advice you'd give to an institution looking to implement a similar mentorship program in their community. Is there any last thoughts you have?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Yes, as I said, this is a staff-intensive program. It's fee-based. It relies on sponsorships. It's a fairly expensive program to run. However, there are programs like the Challenge in communities all across the country. GBEN, the Green Business Engagement National Network, which I cited in a photo in the early part of the presentation, is made up of programs like ours all across the US. So I would recommend tapping into that organization and seeing what kind of program there is in your area. The anchors that we have, that I can say any cultural institution, any museum can use: partnerships, collaboration, and the strength of your own experience. So if you have connections with businesses that are sponsors, looking at ways that you can learn about the sustainability measures that they have or the sustainability measures in place in your community and amplify those through programming. And if there is a program in your area, many of them are supported by utilities, especially on the coasts, looking to join that program and contribute your expertise to a program like the Green Business Challenge that is growing that across your community. And I would be very happy to speak individually with any museums or any AAM partners that would like to know more or ask questions about your specific situation, drawing on that customized service approach that is the anchor of our work.
Thank you, Jean. Excuse me. So before we go ahead and wrap up today, my apologies. I wanted to express genuine thanks to our panelists and to the institutions that have applied for the award, the work that they do, and for taking the time to be with us and share their very important work with the rest of the museum community. Please watch the AAM ECN webpage as the recordings for the first session and this session will be posted. They will be available on demand. And of course, I encourage you to share these with any institution or museum worker you think might be interested in adding sustainability aspects to their organization. We will stick around for just a second more after I stop the recording to answer any questions that were not able to be answered during the Q&A sessions. And finally, I will just ask you to fill out the survey after the webinar because it really lets us know what you're interested in watching and allows us to tailor our content to your needs and your interests. So as a final step, I will hand it over to Andrea, and thank you all again for being here with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Kate, and thank you for everyone who joined us today, particularly the Museum of Modern Art and Burke and Missouri Botanical Garden. Those presentations were amazing and super insightful. So thank you for sharing all of your experience and insight with us. And again, we really want to foster a community of collaboration and input and where you can share best practices and learn from each other. So really would invite you to, again, follow us. Definitely check out the AAM calendar for upcoming events, but also look for us on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter to hear about upcoming events. And I believe we posted a few in the chat. We've got a great event in September and another one coming up in October. So please check those out, you guys. And thank you again so much for your time today.
All right, and as a last disclaimer, please feel free to reach out to anyone on the Sustainability Excellence Awards Committee or the Environment and Climate Network if your institution has questions about applying for next year's awards. If you would like more information, we really are the facilitators for showcasing fantastic work.